Hey folks, welcome back to the show. This is your host, Ryan Kennedy. And today I'm joined by Adam Gilbert, who is the founder of MyBodyTutor. I came across this guy, a friend of mine, actually. I'm in a bit of a small mastermind with a bunch of other health entrepreneurs. And he's like, dude, you got to check out this guy's newsletter. He's got some great copy, great email campaigns. And so I subscribed to Adam's email list. And even though I'm in this space and I live and breathe this stuff, I'm like, man, this guy's spitting some knowledge. I love his approach to weight loss and habit formation and behavior change, and also just really liked the kind of non-BS approach he takes of really focusing on the fundamentals. And so Adam is he's built this huge company, MyBodyTutor, and it's really all about practical and sustainable ways to help you lose weight and keep it off, which is very timely for this conversation as we roll into the new year. It's the end of 2022 at the time of this recording. And Adam has made a career of getting results, people who have really tried everything and haven't managed to keep the weight off. Because I know I talk to a lot of people who have lost weight, but they always inevitably, kind of gain it back and go through this yo-yo back and forth. And since 2007, his company that he's built, MyBodyTutor, is, really one of the world's top accountability programs. He's got a team of over 75 health and fitness coaches. And I really admire what this guy's built. So I'm like, dude, come on the show. Let's jam on all things health and wellness and talk a little bit about business. So we're going to, learn more about the ins and outs of how he's built this and how he gets the results that he does. So welcome to the show, dude.
Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
So start from the beginning, man. Were you always into health and fitness from a young age? How'd you get into this field? And tell us a little bit about your journey getting to where you are today.
Yeah, I've been in health and fitness for as long as I can remember. When I was young, when I was in seventh grade, I witnessed my father have a heart attack. So me and my sister actually drove him to the hospital.
Oh, wow.
And then a few days later, he had triple bypass surgery. So seeing him before, major surgery like that was terrifying. Seeing him after the surgery, hooked up to all these tubes and monitors, was really scary. And especially someone, I hate hospitals. So that was really, really scary. And then later on that year, actually, he was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So seeing him deteriorate mentally and physically throughout the years until he passed away was obviously really hard. And I learned early on that health is true wealth, right? Without it, nothing means anything. So from a young age, I really have taken my health and fitness very seriously. It's become a passion of mine throughout my childhood and, into high school and college. I was always helping people. I was always the go-to guy. I was a personal trainer. So that's what kind of spurred the passion. And then when I was at Ernst & Young, I started my career in corporate America. I was an accountant for a Big Four accounting firm. I was the go-to guy for health and fitness there. And it was always the same story. I would always give, clients and colleagues advice because they'd come to me for it. And it was always the same story. It was a week or two later, they would tell me, oh, I love the plan you made for me, and the but was I got caught up with work, happy hour, kids, life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And I realized right then and there that these people knew what to do, but they couldn't follow through. So I quit my full-time job in January of 2007, started MyBodyTutor in February of 2007. My mom thought I was absolutely crazy. She thought I was nuts. Why can't you just appreciate this job? People would kill to have this job. But I had to do this. This was, a passion. And quit that to start MyBodyTutor and have been at it ever since.
That's incredible, man. You're an OG in the space. I mean, I admire you. Obviously you're good at what you do to be around in this many years, going on close to 15 years now. That's freaking awesome. And so coming back to your journey, when you started MyBodyTutor, I imagine you were the coach and you were bringing on clients. So at what point in that process did you say, all right, I'm going to really scale this thing up and start bringing on a team and actually have other coaches that are working with clients? And how was that process kind of transitioning from you as the guy people are coming to, like, I want to work with Adam. Adam is why I'm here. And then you being like, hey, I'm going to pawn you off to one of my coaches. And obviously you don't use that terminology, but that's the way a lot of people can receive that is like,
yeah,
I want to work with the big, head honcho, not some guy that he hired that he's going to put me with.
Yeah. So very early on, actually in April 2007, a few months after starting this, I actually reached capacity, which was crazy because, I'd started this in my apartment in New York City. I was actually back then advertising on Facebook. Back then it was known as Facebook Flyers. and I would advertise at different colleges. And back then it was more about, let's help you get ready for spring break. That was my approach. Because I had just, recently graduated college 2 years earlier, and I just knew around spring break time, people will kind of get crazy because they want to lose weight, look good for spring break, etc. But very quickly, these people were introducing me to their, siblings and their friends in corporate America, and I reached capacity. And so from very early on in the business, I started bringing on coaches, and there was a lot of things that I think are unique into, my approach to weight loss, that I kind of systematized. So what I was doing was replicable in terms of I could teach it to other people. And, that's what we've been doing, I've been coaching coaches.
I love it. And so coming back to the consistency aspect, you touched on something that I think resonates with everyone. Like, we all know what to do. We all know we shouldn't eat fast food and drink booze and stay up late watching Netflix. We all know we should train and get some exercise in and eat whole foods. And yeah, there's a lot of nuances, and you can dissect to the micro as deep as you want. But at the end of the day, the macro big picture, pretty much everyone knows. For sure, everyone listening to this. So why do you think people struggle so much with the consistency? Why is that so challenging?
Yeah, I mean, answering that is my life's work. And my thesis, even back then, was a lack of knowledge is not the real issue, right? For the most part, we know what to do, right? As you said, we know what's good for us. We know what's not good for us. We know cookies are not the greatest thing for us. We know salad is better for us.
Yep.
Right. So to your question, I really think it comes down to three things. And this is what MyBodyTutor is built on is, number one, the diets that we try to follow are not sustainable to begin with. We can only follow a cookie diet or a shake diet or a lettuce diet or a no carb diet or a no fun diet for so long, right? So the first thing we do with our clients is we talk to them about their preferences, their likes and dislikes, their non-negotiables. It really has to be catered and customized to them, right? It can't just be a cookie cutter plan, right? When I say cookie cutter plan, it's essentially an eat this, don't eat that approach, and they don't take into account what you like and what you dislike, right? So we take the opposite approach. We talk to you about what you like, what you dislike, your preferences, non-negotiables, and build a plan on that. That's first and foremost. Because if you don't do that, then you're doomed for failure from the start.
Yeah.
The second reason why consistency is so hard is that most plans, really only focus on the food you're eating. I call it a food diet, where if the only thing changing is the food you're eating, you're not going to change for the long term. So it's critical that you change what we have to call your MPH: M for mindset, P for psychology, and H for habits. Because when you actually change your mindset and psychology and habits, when you change your relationship with food, it takes willpower out of the equation, right? If you think back to the last diet, for most people, day 1 is easier than day 20 if they even make it that far, right? By day 20, they're hanging on by the skin of their teeth. They can't take it anymore, and they're eventually revert back to their old ways. But when you actually change your mindset, when you change your psychology and habits, and ultimately your relationship with food, it really does take willpower out of the equation, and it makes it easier to stick with as time goes on, right? That's the goal, to get easier and easier as time goes on, not more and more difficult. Our goal is to make MyBodyTutor the last program our clients do, so much so that when they reach their goal with us, they get lifetime access to our maintenance plan for free. And then last but not least, in terms of why consistency is so hard, is a lack of accountability, right? Without accountability, as we know, it's too easy to make excuses. It's too easy to start, say I'll start fresh tomorrow or Monday. And that's why we offer it on a daily basis. So it's the combination of a customized plan, really changing their relationship with food, their habits, their mindset, their psychology, and then having accountability on a daily basis to put it all together.
So let's get into the practical for this, because I love this framework. So when you focus on what someone likes, let's say they come to you and, like the average person, it's like, Adam, I'm overweight because my favorite foods are pizza and ice cream and a bunch of processed, refined, junk foods. Those are the things I love to eat. As with most people, they're ultra hyper palatable, and those are like the most delicious foods. Objectively speaking, I agree. And I'm, don't eat those foods because I don't love the trade out, but I will say those foods are freaking delicious. So what do you tell a person like that? How do you approach how are you going to lose weight and have them eat all this stuff?
Yeah. So, first off, pizza and ice cream are two of my favorite foods as well. Add in hamburgers and we're in good shape. So one of our core philosophies is we want our clients to be fit and happy, not fit and miserable. So instead of starting with like, all right, forget it, you're never going to be able to enjoy those favorite foods, we say, all right, let's work on how to fit those into your plan. Because if you're taking away someone's favorite foods, it's not going to last very long, right? It's going to it's like a rubber band. Eventually you're going to snap. So we'll start with like, all right, these are your favorite foods. These are your non-negotiables. And let's start with that. And then we'll talk about, what are your favorite healthy foods? What are your favorite healthy snacks? and fit that in. And, to me, the best way to do it is let's talk about what you're willing to change and what you're unwilling to change. And, there's a lot of low hanging fruit, so to speak, with what they're willing to change, right? Let's not, you don't want to touch what they're unwilling to change, right off the bat, because then you're just going to lose them.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when you're looking at that as an overall framework, do you fit it into, is your approach around tracking energy intake and looking at calories and macros and having those fit within certain parameters? Or is it more like a certain frequency, like you could have these pizza and ice cream, for example, once a week or twice a week?
Yeah, so we try to stay away from counting calories, counting macros. In my experience, I found it does three things, right? Number one, it doesn't change your relationship with food. Number two, it relies solely on willpower. And number three, it eventually makes you crazy. Most of our clients have come to us after trying a million things and they're done counting points, et cetera. And the problem with that is it truly is, for most people, a willpower-based plan, right? It's like, I'm going to hit these numbers and, you do that for as long as you can. But if nothing's changing between your ears, you're not going to change for long term. So what we do is we focus a lot more on intuitive eating. We focus on your relationship with food. We take a much more behavioral based approach. And that's when you learn how to listen to your body, when you learn why you're eating, when you learn how to overcome emotional and stress eating, you really don't need to count calories. We've helped, thousands of people lose weight with that in that way. And they love it because they feel like this freedom, right? They're not obsessing over calories or macros. They don't have to use MyFitnessPal and track every little thing.
Yeah. So if I'm a client, I come to you because I agree with what you're saying. I'm not a big calorie counter, weigh your food type of guy. I just think it's just the tedious nature and the operational complexity. You lost me, and I'm like head deep into this stuff. So the average person, for sure, I don't think it's the best strategy. But how do you get them the results? If I come to you and I say I like pizza and ice cream and I want to eat these foods, and as far as healthy foods, I hate vegetables. I don't really want to eat blands, proteins and shakes and all that sort of jazz. How would you construct this in a practical setting, like as a case study? If I came to you and I'm like, look, I'm looking to lose 15 pounds, Adam. These are my favorite foods. What do you got for me, bro?
Yeah, so it would be like, all right, like it would truly be like, let's talk about your favorite healthy foods. What are your favorite healthy breakfast ideas, lunch ideas, snack ideas, dinner ideas, and talk about that, right? And from the very start, we would work with what they're willing to eat. And let's just say someone comes to us and they're unwilling to change anything in terms of what they eat. Then we'll talk about, how and why they're eating, right? So if you're unwilling to change what you're eating, and most people are a little bit, obviously, especially if they're coming to us. But if you're unwilling to change what you're eating, we can certainly focus on how you're eating, right? We can focus on why you're eating. We can focus on quantity, right? Frequency. But it would really just be like, all right, let's talk about, what do you typically do for breakfast? What do you typically do for lunch, dinner, snacks? What are your most vulnerable times a day? Where do you usually kind of fall off track? When we kind of go meal by meal, snack by snack, we build a plan they feel comfortable with. Because a big thing we instill in our clients is hope, right? And hope is so powerful, the good thing is hope is a formula, right? And hope comes down to three things, right? Number one, it's having a clear and defined goal. So in your case, it's, 15 pounds, or in your example case, 15 pounds. The second part of hope is having a pathway to reach that goal, right? So we're going to come up with a plan to reach that goal of losing 15 pounds. And most importantly, the third part is you believing you can follow the pathway. Right. And so often we follow these plans, these diets, and consciously or subconsciously, we know we can't stick with it. So we're going to come up with a plan that we know is going to help them lose the weight. But we also have to make sure that we both feel that you can stick with it no matter what. Right. And my belief is that it's far more effective to go 80% versus going like 100% or all in and then burning out. Right. Yeah. So, most people, it's like, all right, I'm going to give up everything. I'm going to exercise for 2 hours a day. But, that lasts for a week at most. Right. And then they're back to square one.
Yeah. Compliance and sustainability are the name of the game.
Exactly. That's what we're obsessed with. Yep.
On the mindset side. So what are some of the initial steps or big needle movers you take when you're working with someone to get them in the right headspace and change their psychology?
Yeah. So, very simply, like I always use like an iceberg as an example, right? So the tip of the iceberg is usually like the food you're eating, right? But the bottom of the iceberg, which is much larger, that's the mindset, the psychology and habits. So most plans are just obsessed with what you're eating, right? Just eat this, don't eat that. When you take the psychology approach, which is what we do, it's of course we care about what you're eating, but we also care about why you're eating, right? When you start to understand why you're eating, when you start to understand your triggers, then you can work on different responses to those triggers, right? So let's say, in the middle of the afternoon, typically you get these cravings, you usually reach for a cookie, right? We'll talk about those triggers. What's driving that behavior? Or maybe it's after a long day, your kids are finally in bed, you reach for some ice cream on the couch. Like, we'll talk about those triggers, we'll work on different responses to those triggers, and work on, a different response, right? But it's the first step is really understanding why you're eating. Because that is the first step to changing your relationship with food.
Got it. And with the intuitive eating thing that you mentioned, the trouble I have with that is I feel when you are eating a lot of highly processed foods, it throws off the intuition. It throws off the cravings and the signaling agents that we naturally, I think it's a great concept. I think if you're eating a clean, balanced diet, it works great. I think if you start to eat a lot of refined sugars and a lot of these processed junk foods, it kind of throws it out the window, because then you just crave more of that stuff, because it's just the way our neurochemistry, it's the way these foods are designed by scientists to trigger our neurochemistry. So I feel like that's a tough thing to rely on unless you are eating a certain way. Do you not find that to be the case?
Yeah, 100%. And I, this is something we address. I mean, I think for many people, it's actually easier to abstain from those foods than to moderate. For me, those foods, and this is my life's work, like, if I start eating Oreos, like, it is very, very difficult for me to just have a few Oreos. Like
Same, dude.
Yeah. Like, they're addicting. And as you said, they're engineered to be addicting, right? They're manufactured to be addicting. They have food scientists that create the most hyperpalatable food possible, right? So, obviously if someone comes to us, there's a part of them that wants to lose weight. There's also, part of them that doesn't want to lose weight. We can kind of dig into that a little later, but there is a part of them that wants to lose weight. And if they realize that, like, when they eat certain foods, they become a cookie monster or a pasta monster, whatever it might be, then naturally it's like, hey, you know what? It might be a lot easier to eat less of these foods than it is, these manufactured processed foods. But the first step, I think, is to first understand, are you an abstainer or a moderator? For me, personally, it is way easier to have no cookies than some cookies, because again, I just want more and more. And some people are able to just have a few cookies, but you have to understand what you are first and foremost.
Yeah, I'm definitely an abstainer. The moderator part is a tough one. And I've always found it's most important to exercise the discipline and the willpower when you're shopping, because once it's in the house, man, it's all bets are off. Like, that's the hardest thing. But if you know yourself and you're like, hey, what I buy is going to go into my mouth and I'm going to eat it, and don't go to the grocery store when you're freaking hungry and craving all these things, and you're actually able to pick out foods, and then the likelihood you get dressed, grab your keys, get in your car, drive to the store just to buy some Oreos or whatever it is, then drive home just to have that is so low. Like, the barrier of entry is now 20x or 100x than if it was just in your pantry. That's what I always teach people, is like, just don't buy it. And if you find yourself at like a party or gathering and you want to indulge, like, that's fine. But if it's in your pantry 24/7, like, you are setting yourself up for failure.
Totally. It is way easier to say no at the supermarket than it is at home. And it is way easier to say no at the supermarket, to your point, if you go there having eaten and not not starving, right? It's, we have a short-term irrational mind versus a long-term rational mind. And when we're hungry, everything looks and sounds good. And I always say it's so much easier to avoid the dragon than it is to slay it. We don't get bonus points for using hero-like willpower. So to your point, we want to make it easy to do good and hard to do bad, right? So, if you have this stuff in in your house, you're going to constantly be thinking about it. And you want to get away from that, because you're just making it so much harder on yourself.
Yeah. Another trick on this I found super helpful is, shout out to Instacart and Prime Delivery. It's like, I never loved going to the grocery store and having like find a parking spot and go through all the aisles and shit. But I find when I like go to order groceries now, ever since like 2020, when I would just order everything online to be delivered, it is exponentially easier to avoid any crap, because you're not like browsing the aisles, seeing all these options, looking at like the entire dessert section of all these amazing baked goods they're selling. You're just like, oh, this is my recent order. Let me just reorder all that crap. And it's all like healthy stuff, and you're like good to go. So that's another thing I think people should utilize more, even if it is $5 or $10, whatever it is. It's so worth it for the convenience and the time savings, but also for the way it detracts you from buying stuff you don't really want to be eating.
Totally. If you don't want to slip, don't go where it's slippery, and ordering online just it prevents that. It makes it so much easier. I couldn't agree more.
So for people that don't like to cook or don't have the time to cook, which I don't fall into that camp. I wrote a cookbook and I love getting down in the kitchen. But I know a lot of people I work with they're busy, they're, entrepreneurs, business owners, they work, full-time job, or they have kids, and they're just like, I don't really want to cook or have time. What meal prep services do you like, or if any? Are there any companies that you're like, hey, this is at BodyTutor, we recommend X, Y, or Z to our clients?
We don't typically recommend any. I believe in meal services. I believe that if you can make it easier on yourself, then great.
Yeah.
Again, you don't get bonus points for using Hero like willpower. And, I think one of the reasons why we get the results we do is we don't have people become chefs, right? If some people don't want to meal prep on a Sunday, they're one day off, and spend 4 hours, creating, 25 meals for the week, right? So we work with what a client is willing to do. There's none that I recommend, but they're all for the most part great, right? You have to, try some, you have to be, some might be better than others, obviously. But to me, if you could find something that makes it easier to eat the way you want to eat, then you should definitely go for it. It's obviously worth the investment.
And how do you build in the accountability? So again, back to the case study, we map out my plan. I'm like, all right, I'm only eating the pizza once a week, Adam, and I'm gonna, follow the X, Y, and Z that we talked about for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. How do you get people to stick to it and keep them accountable without annoying the hell out of them?
Yeah, so we have our own proprietary app. We have a mobile app and website. So each day our clients will share what they ate. So they can either write a brief description of what they ate or upload a photo of what they ate. They'll kind of submit their report at the end of the day. And then the following day and then every day after, their very own coach will write back with personalized feedback, suggestions, and encouragement. So the fact that we're in communication with our clients every single day, that's the key, right? So I think the reason why our clients love it so much is it's not annoying, right? They're not having to obsess over calories or macros. They're just writing a brief description of what they ate or uploading a photo. And then B, every single day they're getting feedback from their coach, right? Personalized feedback. And that's the core component of our service, right? Each day our coaches are writing back to their clients. So it's that, it's a nice reward for submitting your report.
And do you find, how do you handle it if someone's constantly forgetting or skipping the description or the upload? If they're just like, I'm busy and when I'm hungry and I'm eating and I'm not really thinking about taking a photo of my food.
Yeah, it happens. And we pride ourselves on, offering proactive accountability. I think a lot of people who claim to offer accountability, it's more reactive. It's like you have to show up and then your coach is there for you. But as we know, people go MIA, people are busy, people forget about it. There's a lot of shame. They don't have a perfect day. So we're very proactive. As we like to say in MyBodyTutor, we're gentle, but relentless. So we'll proactively reach out to our clients if that happens.
One of the things you mentioned is figuring out why someone wouldn't want to lose weight. And I'm curious if you can dive into that, because I think this is something that's not talked about a lot and most people don't realize it consciously, because they're like, of course I want to lose weight. Like everyone wants to be fit and feel good and look good. And, so talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so self-sabotage is something I've thought a lot about, and I just experienced it with our clients for many, many years. And ultimately what self-sabotage is, in my opinion, is fearing the very thing we say we want, right? It's, you fear this thing, right? So obviously people say they want to lose weight, but there's a part of them that fears it. And what I mean by that is, for some people, being overweight is a security blanket, right? So on some level, they think, well, once I lose the weight, then I have to do X, Y, or Z, right? So some might say like, all right, once I lose the weight, then I'll start dating. Or once I lose the weight, then I'll start doing this. Or once I lose the weight, then I'll quit the job. Whatever it might be, they have these things. But on some level, that weight is protecting them from taking action. And of course, as we know, taking action is the hardest thing. Mm-hmm. So they will use, the weight as a security blanket. And only until you uncover that for the client, you realize that nothing you do is going to matter, right? You can give them the best diet plan in the world. They could have the best weight loss coach in the world. They can have the best program or whatever in the world, the best book. It doesn't matter. If you don't help them change what's going on between here, then nothing is going to work. And that's why we spend so much time focusing on our clients' mindset, psychology, and habits, because if you don't help them overcome that, then it doesn't matter.
Makes sense. So I want to switch gears. Well, actually, on this topic, one last question I have. If you were to impart 3 things, and obviously you went over the broad framework and like a lot of the pillars that you focus on, but as far as like 3 action steps that you think really move the needle or that aren't talked about enough that really would help someone listening to this to, they could apply tomorrow, what would those be?
For weight loss?
For weight loss.
I would say attempt to follow a plan that is actually realistic, one that you feel like you can stick with no matter what. If I had to give you an analogy, imagine you're going from New York to California, aim to go 80 miles an hour instead of 100 miles an hour. So number one is attempt to follow a plan that is actually realistic and practical. Number two, really focus on why you're eating. Before you eat, take a deep breath, pause, ask yourself, am I hungry or am I eating to change the way I feel? Am I hungry or am I eating to change the way I feel? And number three, it would be definitely get some accountability. Ideally daily, ideally from a professional. I call it peer and pro accountability. There's a very big difference. So it'd be those three things.
I love it. On the business side of things, I want to hear a little bit more about your journey growing this company, MyBodyTutor. Now that's, got quite the success. So you mentioned you just reached full capacity, so you started bringing on coaches, and I'm just curious, like, as you continue to progress, like, what are your main avenues as far as lead generation? Like, do you still run Facebook ads? Like, how do you usually, what's your primary areas that you focus on for marketing and generating new business?
Yeah, so thankfully, most of our business comes from referrals. We really did not focus on, referrals are by far the largest part of how we do lead gen, or it's how we get new clients. I really believe that, like, when you treat your clients like gold and you help them get superior results when nothing else has worked, like, they can't help but talk about you. So that's been the biggest thing. We started out very, very early on doing Facebook flyers. That was way before his Facebook ads, and they created this whole ad platform. One of the biggest mistakes I made, although I couldn't handle the growth, was in April of 2007, I stopped doing those Facebook flyers because I had no more capacity. And then many, many years later, we attempted to advertise on Facebook, and it was completely different. And it's very hard and very different. It was much more difficult to get it to work. So our primary avenue for sure is word of mouth. That we really focus on, treating our clients like family, doing anything for them and helping them get out of their own way. So that's been, the biggest driver.
And when someone comes to you, do you have like an initial program you put them through? Because you mentioned also something about a maintenance plan. So what does that look like as far as onboarding new people? Like, what length of time are they, engaged in the initial phase? And then at what point do they go to the maintenance phase? And how is that different than the initial phase?
Yeah. So, I really, as the founder of the company, I believe in what we do more than anything. I really try to make it a no-brainer. So it's a monthly membership. We don't ask our clients to commit, for, 3, 6, or 9 or 12 months up front, just because I think it's unfair if they don't know, how can they know they like it? So it's a monthly membership. We assume our clients will stick with it. This way, when they reach their goal with us, they'll get lifetime access to our maintenance plan for free. So they, we have we have 2 plans. We've had the same 2 plans from the beginning. We have a gold membership and a platinum membership. The core component is each day our clients are sharing what they did in our app or website, and then their coach is writing back to them. That's the core component. The only difference is our more expensive plan also includes daily scheduled phone calls. But once they reach their goal, everything feels sustainable. We want 2 transformations, as I like to say: a physical transformation, obviously help them, look great, help them lose the weight, their body composition goals, but also a mental transformation, right? New relationship with food, new habits, new behaviors. Once they get to that point, they're eligible for a lifetime maintenance. And with that, they get continued access to our app for self-reporting and self-accountability. And then if we see they gain more than 5 pounds, we'll proactively reach out to them. So, our clients really love it. And, we're really committed to making, this the last program they ever do.
Nice, man. And with the scale you're at now, what's been the biggest challenge, like managing, 75 plus coaches?
Yeah, the biggest challenge for sure is managing the coaches, but we're obsessed with quality because I know we're only as good as our coaches. And I think this will be helpful because you want to talk about business a little bit, and I think this took me a long time going back to self-sabotage. Early on, I was by far the bottleneck in the business, right? Because I was obsessed with quality, I was obsessed with perfection, whatever I thought that was in my head. And on some level, I think every business owner, every service provider wants to grow. They want to help more people, right? They want to make a bigger impact. but they also believe and they also feel that they have the weight of the world on their shoulders, that they have very little free time. And they feel that if they serve more people and grow, they're going to even have less free time, right? They're going to have even more responsibility. So until a business owner has the people in place, has the systems in place, they're going to constantly sabotage their own growth as well, right? So again, going back to the weight loss sabotage, you can kind of see the similarities, because again, if you think, if there's a part of you that's like, yes, I want to grow, but there's also a part of you that's like, well, if I grow, I'm going to have even less free time, even more responsibility. You can have the best business coach in the world, the best courses in the world, the best books in the world. If there's a part of you that doesn't want to move forward, that mental roadblock is going to keep you where you are. So until you have those people and places and systems in place, you're going to constantly be like, kind of revving it, but your hands are on, your like foot's on the brake as well. So that was a big thing for me. That was like the biggest obstacles, hiring the right people, having the systems in place, until I felt like we really had a great way to train coaches in our philosophies and our methodologies. All that to say, the biggest challenge by far is just, we're obsessed with quality. We're obsessed with finding the right coaches for us. Thankfully we get a ton of applicants every week, but we're very, very picky in who we hire, because again, I know we're only as good as our coaches.
Mm-hmm. Well, this has been awesome, Adam. I appreciate you coming on, brother. Where can people go to learn more about my body tutor and just learn more about what you got going on in general?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Best bet is go to mybodytutor.com. I'm on all the socials, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. Feel free to reach out to me. I pride myself in being very available, so you can always shoot me an email. I would love to hear from your people. If you have any questions or anything of the sort.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you found it helpful, please share it along to anyone else you believe it can serve. You can submit your own question to be answered on the show by going to ryankennedyhealth.com/podcast. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review for the show. Your feedback helps to support me on my mission to positively impact as many people as possible with this information. Please note, the information depicted in this episode is purely for informational purposes only. Please consult your healthcare professional before making any changes to your lifestyle or routine.